Hi everyone, it's Marco Brown. Hey, I wanted to come talk to you a little bit today about a subject I don't normally talk about with people, which is kind of how to stay married. And I call this the 4 categories of staying married. I've helped a lot of people over the years go through divorce. So what that's taught me is kind of what not to do in order to stay married. So it's kind of the learning in the reverse, right? You know what to do because you've seen a whole bunch of people do the things that they really shouldn't be doing. So these are the 4 categories the 4 most important categories that I've been able to identify that will help you stay married. And they are money. I got notes over here, so I'm going to refer to them. So money, religion, sex, and kids. And I put those 4 categories in order of importance from what I've seen. So let's go over each one of them just a little bit. Money is by far the most important one. You want to fight about stuff, you want to hate each other, you want to get divorced, then do not be on the same page with money. So one person is a gambler and the other person is not. One person spends and profligate spending and just can't get it under control, and the other person is a spendthrift. You're gonna have all sorts of problems. Now, usually in a relationship, one person is a spender and one person is the saver, and that's okay. You need to kind of balance each other out a little bit, but you can't be on wildly opposite sides of the spectrum. Otherwise, it just creates humongous amounts of tension. And you have to be on the same page with these things. All of these categories, if you're not on the same page, you're kind of likely to get divorced. But if you can get on the same page, then you're much more likely to stay married. So you can get together with your spouse, figure out how you're going to deal with money, be on the same page, have a budget, do all of this, and you'll probably be okay. If you don't, it's just going to create huge amounts of tension. And that tension, what it does is it trickles down to every other aspect of your marriage and creates humongous amounts of stress. And have too much stress in a marriage, you're just going to get divorced. So that's money. Next one is religion. This one is sensitive for a lot of people, but let's just be clear about it. If you're of 2 completely different religious beliefs and backgrounds, or one person is maybe an atheist and the other person is highly religious, that's going to make things tough. If you, for example, if you think your kids on the one hand are little balls of meat that are just dancing to their DNA, and the other person believes that children are gifts from God and have free will and all these other things, that and have a purpose in this life and a purpose after this life, those 2 things are pretty, those are diametrically opposed. Those do not go together well at all. So if you have people in a relationship that have those types of feelings about kids and about themselves, then it's hard to mesh. And that's what makes it difficult with religion. If you're on the same page with religion, however, then the stats are that it's very low. In my experience, it's very low that people are going to get divorced, and there's a lot of good psychological data out there too. Now, I'm not really talking from the psychological data so much and demographic data so much. I'm really talking about my experience with it, and my experience has been that if you're just not on the same page at all when it comes to religion, you're going to have a tough time. So that's number 2. Number 3 is sex. There's a lot that gets encompassed with this, but let's talk about frequency for a second. So, guys want sex more than women on average. We all kind of know this intuitively. And that's not a bad thing, because women in a relationship, on average, again, don't get mad at me here, but on average, women are more about keeping the couple emotionally tied, right? And men are more about keeping the couple sexually tied. And those 2 things have to go together. And there really does have to be one person on one and one person that takes the reins on the other. And that's totally okay. But so there's always that tension there, and that tension is fine. But when you're really off the page with it, just one person never wants it, the other person always wants it. Again, there's going to be huge amounts of stress in this. You should probably talk about these things before you get married. But if you're just not on the same page at all, then it's going to create humongous amounts of tension. If you need to talk to somebody about this, then there are sex therapists out there that are really good at this sort of thing. Just don't be bashful about it. If you got a problem, go take care of the problem. Otherwise, the problem is just going to fester, and the dragon's going to get bigger and bigger, and you're not going to be able to slay the dragon after a while. So sex is number 3, and then kids is number 4. Look, if one person doesn't want kids and the other person does want kids, that's usually a deal breaker, right? Because what I found is the person who doesn't want kids usually ends up winning that scenario. But sometimes the person who doesn't want kids ends up having like 5 kids, because they just capitulate to the other person. And they're not really on the same page about it, they just kind of capitulate. And then they resent the other person for forcing them to have so many kids. So again, if you're not on the same page with kids, fundamentally you just shouldn't get married. That's what it comes down to. You should have this discussion at the beginning, and if you didn't have this discussion at the beginning, you should have it right now and get this thing out and either come to an agreement where you have one or none or whatever it is, but come to the agreement on that. Because if you really want kids and your partner forces you to have 0 kids in your life, you will feel like an absolute failure. And if you want 0 kids and your partner forces you to have 3 or 4 kids, you're going to resent your partner so much, your spouse so much. So get on the same page with those things. So again, the 4 were money, religion, sex, and kids in that order. I wanted to go over a couple other things here. I'm not being completely deterministic about this. This is just my experience with the people who come in my office, and I'm kind of rank ordering these in importance from what I've seen over the years. But that doesn't mean that you're going to get divorced if you disagree on one of these categories, like fundamentally disagree on one of these categories. It does make it significantly harder to stay together if you do not play in the same ballpark with money or religion or sex or kids, right? It does make it significantly more difficult if you're just not playing the same game and you're not in the same ballpark. So figure all these things out in the beginning, or figure it out now. But like I said, you can make it work. It's just a lot harder to do that. And then this is another concept that I want to talk about. I call it the bus to hell. So a lot of times what people will do, well, this is the thing. In marriage, you need to be going somewhere, right? If you're just kind of treading water, you can tread water for a long time, and I guess that's okay. You're not going to have a really healthy and happy marriage if you just tread water with each other. But so you need to be going somewhere. You need to have some goals. You need to be saying, okay, this is what we're doing as a family. This is where we're going as a family. And when you're progressing like that, then things tend to go well, right? You're on the same page, you're progressing together, then things tend to go well. But there's this concept I call the bus to hell. So one person will decide that they just want to change the social compact or the marital compact, right? And they go off the rails. There was an agreement about these things. They just go completely off the rails. And they get into this bus and they want to drive it straight to hell. So what they want to do is have their husband or wife get in the bus with them and drive with them to hell. And this is not a good idea. It can work for a little while. I mean, it's the kind of money thing. Like, let's just use money as an example. So somebody becomes a gambler and they just want the other person, their spouse to accept that. And they're going to drive the bus and they want the other person on the bus with them. Well, the other person might get on the bus for a little bit and they might drive down to hell with them and kind of hang out there for a little bit. But I guarantee the other person is really going to resent it and hate. It's going to be hating. They're going to hate being in hell, and they're going to leave. Okay, that's how you get divorced. So even if you're on the same page, but you're driving the bus to hell, you're still going to get divorced. So you got to think through this. You have to be progressing, and you both have to be on the same page about these things. So that's the bus to hell idea. So don't drive to hell. And then a couple other important categories. In-laws, they didn't make the top 4, but in-laws and health. So in-laws, this one's tough. A lot of people don't like their in-laws. That's a real hard concept for me, to be honest with you, because I enjoy my in-laws and my wife enjoys my parents. But a lot of people just do not like their in-laws, and their in-laws do not like them. If your in-laws radically hate you, then it's gonna be hard to really maintain things. To be honest. So figure that out in the beginning. And then, and the other thing is how close you live to your in-laws. So some people want to live like next door, like Everybody Loves Raymond, or some people want to live 5 states away. Get that figured out, get on the same page. And then health. This was a little down on the list, but I mean, if you have somebody who's extraordinarily healthy and really values that, and the other person in the relationship just does not and drinks a whole bunch of Mountain Dew and eats a whole bunch of Ruffles or whatnot and gets themselves monstrously obese, then that's going to create a lot of tension on a lot of different levels. It's probably going to create some sexual tension. It's going to create some money tension. And it might, bleed into these other things, but that's definitely something to think about is where are you on that kind of health spectrum and how can you get on the same page? So again, it's that idea, you don't take the bus down to hell, but you try to get your spouse to progress with you. But all of these things take an amazing amount of really concerted effort. If you're not on the same page, then you really do need to stop what you're doing in other aspects of your life and really focus on getting both of you on the same page, working toward the same goals in all of these categories. That is going to either fix your marriage. There's always going to be problems, but it's very much going to ameliorate a lot of problems you have and mean that you stay together as a couple. If you don't, and you just let these things fester and go away from each other in these categories, then your chances for divorce go up quite a lot. So if anybody has any questions about these or any comments, just put them in the comments below, and I'm happy to address them or make another video on it. So thanks everybody. Appreciate you watching. Bye.